everyone, this is D Crab and I'm going to show you today how to make some terrain out of common food packaging products. Here you can see one of my favorites is from Cheesecake Factory. Great place to eat. If you like cheesecake, they got some of the best. And what I'm going to do is take this container and trying to make some kind of bunker out of it. You notice this unique shape of the product. They put their cheesecake in here. And like I said, the best part besides making terrain out of it is actually eating it. We'll get an idea of what this looks like. Now what I'm going to do is take this, I'm going to cut it, mount it to a MDF base, and then I'm going to try and do a paper mache over it, and we'll get a feeling for what that looks like here in the next segment. Okay? Stay with me. Okay, now here you can see I've cut the container in half. I've got the lid here, which I think will make a great bunker. I've got some slots in that. We'll paper mache over it and paint it. Now you're not going to get paint to stick to this plastic. Any food kind of product, anything for personal use, paint's not going to stick to very well because it's a very smooth plastic. It's not porous and it won't hold the paint. So you need to put something over it, whether it might be a spackle product, something like this, which is very hard to do on a large surface, or a paper mache. You can see I got the two halves. Now this one I'm going to have to figure out what I want to do with, maybe make a bunker out of it, or a pillbox type structure. But we'll get that mounted to some MDF. I'll show you that next. I'm going to just basically use some spackle like that to mount it to a piece of MDF like that, and then we'll show you what that looks like here in the next segment. Here we go. Now you see what I've done is I've glued the lid of the Cheesecake Factory box. You can see I kind of put a couple of slits in it. Those will appear much more visible when we get the paper mache on to make it look more like a pillbox slit. I've used some, I like to use Aleene's tacky glue to glue it to my MDF. Now that's not going to hold it down. I'm going to use something else. I'm going to put this on it around the edges, and when it dries, that spackling will help hold it down. And then also the paper mache when I get it on. You can see what it looks like in here. Let me show you the bottom, what I did with that one. Here's the bottom of that box. See, it's got a lower profile pillbox shape, got a long slit. You can imagine a squad being placed inside there. You can see the tacky glue holding it down. Okay. And I've kept the lid here intact. So I'm planning on building another layer, put some sandbags up here, and make this a two-tier pillbox setup. Now if you don't want to do that, you'll notice that here's what I've done with another project I've got going. Is I cut out the top, so this one doesn't have a roof. And I've taken some MDF, or excuse me, glued it to MDF, but I've got some of the pink insulation foam in the back. Makes a nice platform in here, and this will be an open, kind of a foxhole type pillbox situation. I'll fill this all in with the, right in through here, I'll fill it all in, and this wall will be completed using the paper mache. And hoping I'm pronouncing that right. I know some people pronounce it differently. You know, paper mache, maki. No, actually it's paper mache. But you know, you'll notice I've got more than one Cheesecake Factory container here, gentlemen. When you're getting ready to make a new piece of terrain, what better way to get the cooperation from your spouse or significant other than to say, "Honey, I'd like to take you out to dinner. Let's go to Cheesecake Factory." And then offer an even more special treat and say, hey, how about we take some dessert home? And make sure you save those containers, and you can use those to make some terrain. Now the next step is to make the paper mache and apply it, and then when it dries you can paint it and fancy it up. Well, actually the next step I'm going to do is put that layer of spackle in here, that ramp of spackle, which will actually hold this down. Okay. I'll show you what that looks like in the next segment. Okay, here's an example of what I was talking about with regard to the spackle being placed along the bottom to hold the piece down. This is not one of my Cheesecake Factory containers. You can tell that obviously this is from, basically it looks like a printer cartridge, you know, that you would get on your printer copier at work or at school or someplace. You take the cartridge out, put it into the printer. And this is the cardboard that's left over that holds it in place, packing cardboard. Just cut a couple of slits in the corners, make it look kind of pillboxy. And you take the spackling, just smooth it in through here, and when it dries, it's a nice tight bond with the, especially got the glue underneath. Pick that thing up and shake it, it's not going anywhere. I just applied a coat to the inside here. I'm going to put another layer in. Once this dries to help smooth it out. That's just the initial layer. Put some openings there to put figures in. Actually stick some guns out here. So that's a piece of terrain. Maybe I'll make another video showing how that one turns out. But right now we're going back to our Cheesecake Factory piece of terrain. Let me show you what it looks like once I've got the paper mache on. Now, this is a piece I've already started. This is a pillbox. You notice got the two slits with a firing or a slit for a gun. Got the paper mache on there. You can see I put paper mache over the spackling, kind of smooth it down, make this like it's right into the ground. Coming around to the back, and I've got a little bit of space in the back here. I've made some sandbags out of spackling also. Actually, this is paper clay, and I'm going to lay the sandbags here to make a wall, like an entrance. I'll cut a slot. There's a hole back here. I can actually put figures in there, and we'll paint that up. It paints up fairly easily. You'll be able to see here in a second some variations. Here's a piece that's already been painted. This is actually, I don't know if you can't tell by the shape, that is from a formal dance held at our school. One of my students bought a corsage for a young lady, and this is the one half of the corsage box. So it looked like a pillbox, cut a slit in it, stuck it on a piece of MDF. Now you can see a few rough spots here. I need to smooth those out with some more paper mache. I've started painting it with just a basic latex paint. One of these paints right here, and you can see how that turned out. Now, if you try and spray paint it, you want to add some plastic bits to it to fancy it up a bit. Here you can see, here's a pillbox, and I've added a periscope type device right there. That's actually from a water sprinkler, and this is the lid from one of those squeeze baby food containers. Turn off that lid, it looks like a ventilation fan. Now the shininess around there, you'll notice I spray painted this one with black spray paint to see how it would work. I don't think spraying these things is a good idea, but you have to do it for this plastic, because again, these plastic pieces that are used for food or food containment will not hold paint very well, so you've got to put something on there. You can see the original color down in there, some green. Okay. So I think this will work out. Now, this is one of my lessons learned. You have to be very careful about the edges with your paper mache. Kind of hangs down in there. I have to cut that off. And I tried using some painter's tape here. It didn't quite stick very well. So we're going to have to figure out something different to help keep the paper mache stuck where we cut the edges. Okay. Next step, I'll show you my Cheesecake Factory. So you can see the shape here. Cheesecake Factory box. Okay. Layout very similar to that one. Okay. I just didn't cut a gun slot in this one. This is more of a command bunker. This is more of a front line bunker, a firing point. And this one would be, a bunker firing point, open top, and then also the others. So we'll show you what this one looks like here in a minute once I get some gray paint on it. Okay, so I know in the last segment I told you this one would have some gray paint on it, but I forgot I wanted to accomplish one thing before I did that, and it's always good to get your model put together before you paint it. I wanted to put these sandbags across the back, make it a little more realistic, provide a little cover for those guys that don't get caught in an ambush from behind. So I stacked up some a sandbag wall, L-shaped standard wall. 3 or 4 sandbags high. If you notice, I alternated the sandbags as far as direction. Sandbags are made out of, just like I said, a paper clay. They'll look a lot better when they get painted up. Those sharp edges tend to soften up a little bit with the paint and then look better. Okay, so how about the pieces I was working on tonight? Here we go. You can see I got the spackle around the edge. Just so wet, we're going to let that dry, and then we will take and paper mache it just like this, and then we'll actually start painting them all up at once, since I want them all to provide a coherent look on the battlefield. This is going to be a part of a terrain set of bunkers. There's that one. Here is the one with the roof on it. Yeah, it's going to sit right there, and I'll take some of my sandbags and put them around here on the top, provide like a double-decker effect, if you will. You can see the spackle all around there. That'll dry up nicely and hold that piece there. It's not with the Aleene's glue, and that it's not going to go anywhere. Now you have to be careful. Let me mention that this stuff is a thin plastic, especially the tops, before you get the paper mache on, so don't put any weight on them too much. But once you get that paper mache on, they get much sturdier and be able to hold more. But until then, don't put it, especially once you cut that lid off. You can see how flimsy that is. That paper mache is really going to have to hold that in place. And finally, the lid. You can see I just picked it up, brought it over here. It's holding its own weight, but again, very flimsy until you get that paper mache on there, which provides much more rigidity, and also will provide a surface for the paint to adhere to. You might want to try painting this. I wouldn't recommend it, but if anybody has any success painting food quality plastic, please let me know, because I don't know of any right now. And we'll get a couple of bunkers and pillbox type devices out of all this, and I've decided I'm going to rework these a bit. You can see this is my first attempt at paper mache. I've got some rough edges that came out. You got to be careful about those. On in here, on the side, takes away from the look of realism. I'm going to maybe try and sand those off a bit. And I do think that spray painting is not the way to go unless you add some plastic pieces on the top. But we'll get that painted up. You can see the rough spots on this one too. So we're going to see what we can do to fix that. Did a much better job on the paper mache on this one. I'm going to smooth out the rough spots, the edges. You have to be very careful about that. Now to make paper mache, what you need is some paper. Cut in strips like this. Just a bunch of newspaper. Cut in strips. I like to cut for pillboxes because they lay concrete in blocks. You cut them in, try and get them in straight lines. But you don't want them too straight, because then they look fake. Just a bunch of paper, and we'll get those paper mache. See you next time. Okay, here's my paper mache. You can see it looks like a consistency of pancake batter. What this is basically a half cup of flour, 3/4 cups of water, and then some salt. Put some salt in it because one of the recipes I said it will help your paper mache keep it from getting moldy, which I live in Alabama. It's pretty humid here, and you don't want moldy terrain. So this stuff you can see is consistency of pancake batter. It looks like pancake batter. Probably could make pancakes out of it. Maybe throw an egg in there to make it taste better. But I want something that if it chips might show a little less of the white. So what I'm going to do is put in some thin down black paint. I'm going to stir this up and make it gray. Whenever you make something like plaster of Paris or whatever. You want to stir in the color into the mix rather than just painting it on, because that way if it chips and you see the color in it. Now you see how this is graying up a little bit. Probably got to put a little more in there. Make sure I get it off the sides, just to give it a little bit of color, so if the outside paint chips, it looks like it maybe might be a little more like concrete inside. So I'm going to go ahead and finish mixing this up, and then I'm going to start applying the paper mache to my different bunkers. Remember the one with the top, the Cheesecake Factory bunker, the double layer bunker, and the regular open foxhole type bunker there. We'll get that paper mache mixed up a little bit more, get the color even more evenly distributed, and I'll have my beautiful assistant, my wife, come down and film while I apply some paper mache. Okay, now it's time to start applying some of the paper mache. I'm going to take it, I'm going to dip it in here and just let it scrape off on the sides. You don't want it to be too thick, because then it'll clump up when it's on the product, but you got to make sure you get both ends. Just run it off, just scrape it off on the edge there. Now what I'm going to try and do is put this in here so that it'll be on both sides of the opening, so I don't look at any gaps. You just lay that on there and just smooth it out, just like that. Okay, take another piece of paper, dip it in the paper mache, scrape off the excess off the cup, and if you do it this way, you just get a little bit on your fingers. Now you're going to need to have something to wipe your hands off on, in case you want to scratch your nose or something like that. Okay. And it always helps you notice, hey, I'm filming this, it's moving around a little bit, because somebody's obviously filming. And my beautiful assistant, my wife, is helping me with this right now. Be careful to get it down in there just right. There we go. Now let's see that that's sticking up, so I'm going to wipe my hands off, take something to try and push it down and fold it right there like that. There, that'll keep that opening from the paper from separating from the plastic and making a gap. Okay, so I'm going to apply a lot more paper mache. I'll be back with you in a few minutes. Now you can see I've paid special attention around the slits here. I wanted to make sure I got these right. When I did my first one, I noticed that I only put paper mache on the outside, and what it did was it started to separate, and I had to actually put some glue around the edges of the slots. So I thought this time I'd be a little more careful. I peeled some smaller pieces of paper and tried to put paper mache over and fold them over, and if you look closely you'll see that it overlaps onto the inside of what would be the firing slit. This, I hope, will keep the paper mache up against the edges of the firing slit and keep it from separating. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some longer strips. What I like to do is pieces of paper, you'll notice I tried to cut them fairly straight, and I'm going to apply those in longer strips. When you lay concrete, if you notice, well, here I'm in my basement, you'll see these seams in the concrete. That's the way they pour it. They have frames or molds that they use, forms I think is what they're called, and they get little lines between the different molds where the concrete kind of comes out a little bit. So I'm trying to accomplish that same thing here. That's what I'm trying to use, is the different themes or seams as I lay the longer pieces. Let me put a few more pieces on here. Remember to smooth them out with your finger, okay, and get them smooth. That'll help you avoid some of these gap things like I've got in this one right there. You can see those gaps. I'm going to have to, it's now dry, but I'm going to have to fix it, and it causes it to look like paper mache rather than a real bunker. So we're going to go ahead and put some more paper mache on and show you what it looks like here in a few more minutes. It's right now, it's 2:38. I'll see how many minutes it takes me to put this together. Okay, so there you have it. It's completed all the way around with paper mache. Tried to get all the rough spots smoothed out. You can see the paper mache is clumped up. That'll dry out. If it does clump, give it a little texture. Make it look more like an unfinished concrete or maybe hurried bunker now. So that one's looking good. You notice I went down considerably onto the spackling that's holding it on. That'll give us an extra bit of strength to hold this thing on. So I'm going to start with this bunker next and then the other one, and we'll be back with you shortly. There we have it. There is the second piece. This is the open bunker. Did a lot more work. Had to get those walls. Those are paper mache. There's no plastic inside there because of the shape of the inside of the container. You can see a lot more. There'll be some holes, some gaps I'm going to have to fill in. But we'll get a look at that when it dries here later. I still have this piece to do. I'm going to get that done here shortly, but I'm out of paper mache. I'm going to have to go make some more. So anyway, we've got these two done, this one and this one. We will make some more paper mache and get this one done and get painted on that other one. Now for the last one, you can see I made some more paper mache and I put a little extra black in there to make it even a darker gray. As you notice, you can still see a lot of the ink from the paper through here and read some of the articles. But basically I'm going to see if I can darken that up, maybe take some of that out, make it a little harder to see. As I was preparing this paper mache, came flooding back all the memories from 7th or 8th grade art class with Mr. Lederber. And I had to make some paper mache project, and I used a quart bottle of ginger ale and a balloon and made a cat with a tail. And I remember how gross that thing looked and how I had very little creativity in that period. And now here I am. I think Mr. Lederber would probably be just so pleased to see the creativity and the artistic nature of these creations and how things, how I'm doing, making terrain for a game that I love to play, Warhammer. So here's to Mr. Lederber. Thanks a lot for your inspiration. Okay, and there's the last one. You can see the difference between the colors with the darker in there. I don't still think the print's going to come through, so we'll have to see how the paint works out. But again, this one was much easier. It's much easier to do this one than that one. It took me about an hour to do this one, half hour to paper mache that one, and a half hour to paper mache this one. So closed pieces are much easier to do. We'll start painting and let these dry and start painting the other one, and we'll see how things turn out. Okay, so here we go. Final product on the painted Cheesecake Factory bunker. Let's see, here's some jungle train I've laid out. Do a little zoom view over here. There you can see it. And let me pull some of this terrain away. Here it is. Final bunker. I painted up in a jungle theme. Static grass, flock, big bushes from on the railroad. The vines and moss growing on the top. Pull back here a little bit to look at the back. Here's the sandbags, entryway. You kind of feel, but I think it turned out pretty well. Pretty happy with it. Looking forward to seeing how the other ones turn out. Let me know what you think about this method of making terrain. Let me know what you think if you want to see other videos on terrain making ideas and how this works out. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to hearing from you.